Hi, good evening, friends. So go ahead and write your date, your title, and your learning goal down. Your learning goal tonight is I can identify and describe lines based on their position and their relationship with other lines. Basically, that means that we're going to be talking about our two lines parallel, our two lines perpendicular. And there are a couple of other ways that we're going to learn to describe those lines. So go ahead and pause your video and get that copied down and press play when you're ready to begin again. Okay, so tonight we are going to specifically be looking at parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and something that we call oblique lines. Let's go ahead and refresh our memory of what parallel lines are. Parallel lines are lines that never touch, which is what we talked about today in class. But we can also describe parallel lines as lines that are always the same distance apart. So notice that I've drawn different sets of parallel lines here. They can go in any direction you want. The only thing is that they have to have the same distance between them at all times. No matter where you are on that line, they are always the same distance apart. So go ahead and pause your video, get that copy down, and press play when you're ready to begin again. The next one that we're looking at is perpendicular lines. And we've talked about perpendicular lines. They're lines that cross. The important thing about perpendicular lines is that where they cross, they form a perfect right angle. And I've drawn two sets of perpendicular lines here, and you can see that I drew a little square in the corner because I told you that it forms a perfect right angle, a square, or an L where the lines intersect. So see that this is where my lines intersect, and I can draw a perfect square in that corner. That tells me that it is a right angle, which a right angle is 90 degrees. We'll be focusing on angles and their degrees next week, but it is important to know that a right angle is 90 degrees. You also notice that they form a perfect capital L where they meet. You may pause your video and press play when you're ready to begin again. Okay, oblique lines are lines that don't yet intersect, but eventually will if the lines were to be extended. They will not form 90-degree angles. So they may be lines that are already touching and don't form 90-degree angles, or they're lines that when they're drawn, that doesn't look like they're touching yet, but if I were to stretch this line out, it would eventually cross paths with the other line, and it does not form a 90-degree angle. So oblique lines are lines that don't yet intersect but will, or are lines that do intersect already, but they definitely don't have right angles where they meet. Pause your video and press play when you're ready to begin again. Alright, I would like for you to draw this shape in your notebook. This is a trapezoid, and please label the corners A, B, C, and D. We're going to think about some different ways that we can describe this shape. Remember that each line has a name, so from here to here is line AB. Because it can be extended, it is line AB. From here to here is what we call BC. From here to here is what we call line CD. And from here to here is what we would call AD. So there are a couple of different ways that we can describe this shape using the words parallel, perpendicular, and oblique. I am going to look at the lines AB and CD. So AB and CD are the lines that I want to compare first. From A to B and C to D, they don't touch yet, but if I were to extend these lines on their imaginary surface, and I were to extend AB, notice that those lines cross. And they do not actually form a perfect right angle. So we are going to say that AB is oblique to line CD. That means that they intersect, or they eventually will intersect with each other. All right, let's choose another set of lines to describe. I would like to describe this line, BC, with AD. These two lines are never going to touch each other because they are the same distance apart the whole way through my shape. And lines that are the same distance apart and never touch are what we call parallel. So I would describe BC as parallel to AD. And these little parallel lines here are a shorthand, or a short quick way to write BC is parallel to AD. And I'm going to write that down there just for you guys to remember what that means. Parallel. All right, I want us to look at another shape now. This time we're going to look at a square. So if you would draw a square in your notebook. And again, we're going to label it A, B, C, and D. Let's go ahead and think of some ways that we could describe this. Well, we could say that AB is parallel to CD. AB is parallel to CD because they are never going to touch each other. They're the same distance apart. We could also say that AB, which is this line here, is perpendicular, which is what this means, to BC. And this is BC. Because look here, if you were to extend this line, and you were to extend this line, you end up with a perfect right angle in the corner, which is what we would call perpendicular. So you can describe that as AB is perpendicular to BC. I would like for you to come up with 2 more different descriptions for this shape, and we'll talk about them tomorrow. So we've already said that AB is parallel to CD. AB is parallel to CD. And we have said AB is perpendicular to BC. So you can't use these sets of lines anymore, but I would like for you to come up with 2 more descriptions that compare lines to each other in this shape, and we'll talk about them tomorrow. Tomorrow you are going to need to be able to draw parallel, perpendicular, and oblique lines. And we're going to be looking at a map when we do this. So we're going to be using roads as our lines. I look forward to seeing your notes tomorrow and answering any questions that you might have. Have a great night.